Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha.
Let me start by explaining that I do not forgive very easily. I have not, for instance, forgiven my father, who made my life a living hell. But those last two sentences don't mean what you think they do, and to understand them, you have to learn a little about what forgiveness is. Let us commence by defining the term. To forgive is to let someone off what they have done and to make things between us the same as though it had never happened. It's to relieve us of our antagonism and them of their feelings of guilt. To do this, however, requires that we first judge them guilty, else there's nothing there to forgive. Note also that we don't forgive people who've hurt us by accident. Of them we say, oh well, they didn't mean it. It was an accident. So guilt, and from that forgiveness, requires some degree of intent to hurt, or at least choice. It assumes that the other person knew that what they were doing was wrong in some way, and also that they deliberately continued to do it. Having defined forgiveness in a form that I hope will not be argued too far and is generally acceptable, let me now say this. What follows, i.e., my views on forgiveness, are just that. They're my views. They're not the views that I believe everyone else should have. Before I forgive, I tend to be very careful, for forgiveness is a dangerous activity. I consider carefully if I've judged correctly, and not just from my own subjective viewpoint, for if I do that, then I am guilty of a major sin. I will not only have judged, but judged unjustly. We're specifically warned not to judge, lest we be judged. To have forgiven after the judgment does not undo our sin of judging. To judge someone guilty, I must also have judged that they had both intent and choice. Who am I to claim that I can look into someone's heart and make those decisions? It seems to me that this is exactly why God warns us not to judge. Let us also consider something else that is of interest on the subject of forgiveness. Isn't it true that we tend to forgive those we know more easily than those we don't? Let's look for a moment at why this is so. When a friend does something to offend us, we're more likely to say, oh, that's only David being David. He doesn't really mean it. Or maybe, that's Julia. She can't help it. She's always a bit sharp like that. Notice that in both instances, we forgive or discount the injury on the basis of our knowledge of the other person. With a stranger, we have no such knowledge, and therefore we judge, and hopefully forgive. But first, we judge. The interesting thing for me is that when someone hurts me, and I start to think about them and what they've done, and try to see what was happening inside of them to have made their words or actions seem reasonable to them, and make no mistake, they will seem reasonable to them. When I do that, I find that I start to get a closer understanding of them, and then they become like a friend that I don't need to forgive because I have understood where they were at, and there's no longer any need for forgiveness. Let's follow this point of interest a little further, because it really does interest me a great deal. You see, the reason we find so little to forgive of our friends is that we love them. We love them because we have come to understand them. So it seems understanding breeds love. So, if each time instead of judging someone, I work at understanding them, I actually get closer to loving them, and that's why I find it less to forgive, and also have avoided the dangerous act of judging. You see, judging is dangerous because we do not know, cannot know, what troubles and handicaps God has given another person that make it hard for them to avoid a particular hurting word or act. We cannot know how hard they are working on eliminating that fault from themselves. We have no idea what life is like for them. We don't know what lessons God has set for them to learn, and what type of personality disorders He has allowed them to have, so that the task of working through them will bring them closer to Him. Do you see now why I find it so very hard to judge another? But there is nothing to forgive unless I have first judged.
Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha.